Holy Spirit, don't let me give up on God just because I can't feel His presence anymore. What do you do when you still believe in God, but you can't feel Him anymore? Not because you stopped praying, not because you walked away, but because something changed. And now the same presence that once felt real feels distant. You remember how it used to be. You remember moments where you felt peace without explanation, where you sensed God close, where your faith felt alive and effortless. And now you try to go back to that place, but it feels empty. You pray, but nothing moves inside you. You worship, but it feels like words. You try to connect, but there is silence. And that silence is what hurts the most. Because the hardest part is not losing your faith. It is trying to hold on to it while feeling like God is no longer there. That is where confusion begins. You start questioning yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I drift without noticing? Why does it feel like God pulled away when I needed Him the most? And the more you think about it, the heavier it gets. Because now it is not just about feeling empty. It is about what that emptiness means. But here is what you need to understand before anything else. What you are feeling is real, but what you are believing about it might not be. In Psalm chapter 22, verse 1, there is a cry that says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That was not spoken by someone who lost faith. That was spoken by someone in the middle of it. Which means this moment you are in does not mean you lost God. It means you are in a place where your faith is being stretched beyond what you are used to. And that is where most people begin to give up. Not because they stopped believing, but because they stopped feeling. And that is exactly why this moment matters so much. Because what you choose right now will define whether your faith weakens or becomes something deeper than it has ever been. When the presence you once felt disappears. There is something about remembering that makes this even harder, because you know what it felt like before. You remember moments where God felt close, where your heart responded, where your mind was at peace without effort. And now, standing in this silence, that memory becomes a contrast that makes everything heavier. You are not just dealing with absence. You are comparing it to what you had, and that comparison creates a quiet frustration inside you. You begin to wonder why it changed, why something that once felt so real now feels unreachable, why you can no longer connect the same way, even though you are trying. And this is where something subtle begins to happen. You start chasing the feeling. You try to recreate the same emotional connection. You repeat the same prayers. You look for the same atmosphere. You expect the same response, but nothing happens because what you are trying to recover is not meant to return the same way. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1, it says there is a time for everything. That includes seasons in your spiritual life. Seasons where God feels close and seasons where He feels silent. Not because He left, but because something is changing in how you relate to Him. Right now you are in a season where feeling is no longer the foundation, and that feels uncomfortable because you were used to sensing Him. You were used to emotional confirmation. You were used to feeling secure through experience. But now that layer is gone, and without it everything feels uncertain. But what if this is not loss? What if this is transition? Because there is a level of faith that only develops when feeling is removed. A level of trust that cannot grow when everything is emotionally confirmed. And this is where you are right now. Not abandoned, but being led into something deeper. And the reason it feels so intense is because this is where your faith stops, depending on what you feel, and starts confronting what you truly believe. The internal conflict no one sees. There is a battle happening inside you that no one else can see. On the outside, you still believe. You still show up, you still try, but inside something feels off, and you don't know how to explain it. You want to stay close to God, but you feel distant. You want to trust, but something inside you feels uncertain. You want to feel his presence, but all you feel is silence. And that creates a tension that is hard to carry, because now it is not just about God, it is about you. You start questioning your own heart. Am I losing my faith? Am I becoming cold? Why does it feel like I am trying harder and feeling less? And then something even deeper starts to grow. Guilt. Because you feel like you should not feel this way. You feel like a real believer should not struggle like this. You feel like doubt should not exist if your faith is strong. So instead of expressing what is happening, you hide it. You keep it inside. You pretend everything is fine, but it is not. Because inside you are trying to stay connected to God while feeling completely disconnected at the same time. And that contradiction is exhausting. In Mark chapter 9 verse 24, there is a moment where someone says, "I believe, help my unbelief." That is not weakness. That is honesty. That is what real faith looks like when it is under pressure. Because faith is not the absence of struggle. It is the decision to stay even when everything inside you feels uncertain. And that is exactly where you are. You are not walking away. You are fighting to stay. Even when it feels like nothing is responding. Even when your emotions are silent. Even when your mind is full of questions. And that fight is not something to hide. It is something to recognize. Because what you are feeling right now is not a sign that you are losing your faith. It is a sign that your faith is being tested at a deeper level. And this is where many people start to slowly drift away, not in one moment, but little by little, because the silence becomes heavy and the effort begins to feel empty. The quiet danger of slowly drifting away. People rarely walk away from God in a single moment. It does not happen suddenly. It happens quietly, slowly, almost unnoticed. You do not wake up one day and decide to give up. You just begin to disengage. You pray a little less. You stop expecting anything when you do. You go through the motions, but your heart is not in it the same way. And over time, distance grows. Not because you chose to abandon God, but because you felt nothing when you tried to stay close. That is what makes this so dangerous, because it feels justified. You tell yourself, what is the point if I feel nothing? Why keep trying if there is no response? Why keep showing up if everything feels empty? And without realizing it, you begin to step back. Not physically, internally. In Revelation chapter 2 verse 4, it speaks about losing the first love. Not losing God, but losing the intensity, the connection, the fire that once defined your relationship. That is what drifting looks like. It is not rebellion, it is gradual distance. And the most dangerous part is that it feels normal while it is happening. You adjust to the silence. You lower your expectations. You stop hoping for the same connection you once had. And slowly, what once mattered deeply becomes something you barely engage with. But here is what you need to see clearly. This is not where you are meant to stay. The silence is not permission to drift. It is a moment that requires decision. Because if you keep moving in this direction, the distance will grow. Not because God moved, but because you stopped reaching. And that is why this moment matters so much. Because you are still aware, you still feel the tension, you still recognize that something is missing. And that awareness is what can stop the drift. Because the moment you see it, you have a choice. Continue slowly stepping away, or decide that even in silence, you will not let go. The lie your mind starts to believe in the silence. When you stay in this place long enough, something begins to form inside your mind. A quiet conclusion. Not loud, not obvious, but persistent. Maybe God left. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe I did something I cannot fix. And the more you sit in silence, the more those thoughts start to feel real. Because your mind is trying to explain what your heart cannot understand. You are trying to make sense of the absence you feel, and without realizing it, you begin to build a story around it. A story where you are distant. A story where God is no longer near. A story where something broke. But that story is not truth. It is interpretation. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, it says that God will never leave you nor forsake you. That is not based on your feelings. That is based on his nature, which means even when you feel nothing, that truth has not changed. But your mind is not anchored in truth right now. It is reacting to experience, and experience without understanding creates false conclusions. You begin to believe that silence means absence, that lack of feeling means lack of presence, that emptiness means distance. But what if none of that is true? What if the silence is not God stepping away? What if it is something deeper happening that you do not yet see? Because the moment you believe that God is gone, something inside you begins to shut down. You stop expecting, you stop reaching, you stop trusting the same way. And that is where the real danger begins, not in the silence itself, but in what you start believing about it. Because if you believe God left, you will stop seeking him. And if you stop seeking him, the distance will feel real, even if it never actually existed. So this is the moment where something has to be corrected. Not your feelings, your interpretation. Because once you see that the silence does not mean what you thought it meant, everything begins to shift. What no one told you about God's presence. You were taught to recognize God through what you feel. Peace in your chest, calm in your thoughts, a sense of closeness that reassures you he is there, and because of that, you built your faith around those moments. But no one told you what happens when those feelings disappear. No one explained that God's presence is not dependent on your ability to feel it. And that is where everything becomes confusing, because now, without that emotional confirmation, you feel like something is missing, like the connection is broken, like God stepped back. But what if nothing actually changed on his side? What if the only thing that changed is how you perceive him? In Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 24, God says that he fills heaven and earth. That means his presence is not something that comes and goes based on your emotions. It is constant. It is everywhere. It is unchanging. So if he did not leave, why does it feel like he did? Because you were measuring his presence by your feelings, and feelings are not stable. They rise and fall. They respond to circumstances. They reflect your internal state. But they are not a reliable way to define what is real spiritually. That is the shift you are facing right now. You are being pulled out of a faith that depends on feeling into a faith that depends on truth. And that transition feels uncomfortable because it removes your usual sense of certainty. It forces you to trust without emotional confirmation. It challenges everything you were used to relying on. But this is where your faith becomes real, not when you feel God, but when you remain even when you don't, because now you are not following a feeling, you are trusting a reality. And that reality has not changed. God is still present. God is still near. God is still working, even in silence. And once you begin to understand that, something inside you stabilizes. You stop chasing the feeling. You begin to stand on what is true. And that changes everything about how you move forward. Because now you are no longer depending on what you feel. You are learning to trust what remains. The Holy Spirit works the deepest when you feel him the least. This is the part no one explains. And because of that, most people misunderstand it completely. You think God is most active when you feel him strongly, when your emotions respond, when your heart is moved, when everything inside you aligns with what you believe. But what if the opposite is also true? What if the moments where you feel the least are the moments where he is doing the deepest work? Because when you feel everything, your faith rests on experience. But when you feel nothing, your faith is forced to go deeper. It is no longer supported by emotion. It has to stand on something stronger. In Romans chapter 8, verse 26, it says that the Spirit helps in your weakness, even when you do not know how to pray. That means his work does not stop when your awareness stops. He continues even when you do not perceive him. Right now, something is happening inside you that you cannot measure. Your dependence on feeling is being stripped away. Your faith is being anchored in something more stable. Your relationship with God is being rebuilt from the inside out. And that process feels like silence, because it is not emotional, it is foundational. You are not being abandoned, you are being transformed. And transformation at that level does not always come with sensation. It comes with stillness. It comes with quiet shifts you do not notice immediately. It comes with changes that only become clear later. That is why this moment feels so confusing, because you are expecting to feel something, while God is working in a way that goes beyond feeling. And if you misinterpret that, you will think he left. But if you understand it, you will realize something powerful. He is closer than you think, not in the way you feel, but in the way he is shaping you. And once that becomes clear, you stop measuring his presence by your emotions. You begin to trust his work even in silence, and that leads you to something deeper. Because now you start to ask a different question. Not why can't I feel him, but why would God allow me to go through this kind of silence in the first place? Why God allows you to feel this emptiness? This is the question that changes everything. Why would God allow this? Why would he let you reach a point where you feel disconnected, where your prayers feel empty, where the presence you once relied on is no longer something you can sense? It feels like distance. But what if it is actually design? Because there is something God cannot build in you while your faith depends on feeling. As long as you feel him, you rely on that feeling. As long as your emotions confirm his presence, your trust is supported by experience. But real faith, mature faith, is not built on what you feel. It is built on what you choose when you feel nothing. In Job chapter 23, verse 8 to 10, Job says he looked for God and could not find him, yet he declares that God knows the way he takes and will bring him through. That is not emotional faith. That is anchored faith, and that is what is being formed in you. God is not removing his presence. He is removing your dependence on feeling it. Because if your faith only exists when you feel him, then it is not stable. It will rise and fall with your emotions. It will weaken when life gets hard. It will disappear when silence comes. But when your faith is built beyond feeling, it becomes unshakable. That is what this season is creating. It is teaching you to stay without emotional confirmation. It is teaching you to trust without immediate response. It is teaching you to believe without needing to feel. And that is where your faith becomes real. Not fragile, not dependent, but rooted. This emptiness you feel is not punishment, it is preparation. It is the space where a deeper relationship is being formed, a relationship that does not collapse when feelings change, a relationship that remains even in silence. And once you understand that, something shifts inside you. You stop resisting the silence. You start learning from it. Because now you realize this is not where your faith ends. This is where it begins to mature, when your faith stops depending on feeling. There comes a moment where everything inside you has to choose what it will stand on, not what you feel, not what you sense, but what you truly believe. Because up until now, your faith has been supported by moments. Moments where you felt peace, moments where you felt God close, moments where everything inside you confirmed that he was there. But now, those moments are gone. And without them, you are left with a decision. Do you stay or do you walk away? This is where your faith is redefined, not as something emotional, but as something intentional. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, it says that we walk by faith and not by sight. That does not only apply to what you see, it applies to what you feel, because feelings can be just as misleading as sight. Right now, your feelings are telling you something is missing, but your faith is asking you to trust that nothing has changed. That tension is where growth happens, because when you choose to stay without feeling, something inside you strengthens. Your faith is no longer reacting to emotion. It is standing on truth. It is holding on to what you know, even when you cannot sense it. And that creates a different kind of stability. You are no longer easily shaken. You are no longer dependent on emotional confirmation. You are no longer questioning everything the moment your feelings shift, because now your faith has roots, and roots are not visible. They grow in silence. They grow in places where nothing seems to be happening, but that is where strength is built. And the deeper those roots go, the harder it becomes for anything to shake you. That is what is happening inside you right now. You are not losing your connection with God. You are deepening it, from something that depended on feeling into something that cannot be broken by silence. And once that shift begins, something powerful becomes possible. You can remain even when everything inside you feels empty, even if you feel nothing. Stay. This is the moment where everything becomes real, not when you feel something, but when you don't, and you choose to stay anyway. Because anyone can stay when they feel God. Anyone can pray when there is emotion. Anyone can believe when there is confirmation. But what about now? What about when your prayers feel empty? What about when your heart feels numb? What about when you say His name and nothing moves inside you? This is where your decision matters. Not your emotion, not your experience, your decision. In Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 17 to 18, there is a declaration that even if everything fails, even if nothing responds, still I will rejoice in God. That is not emotional faith. That is chosen faith. That is what you are stepping into. You are no longer staying because you feel something. You are staying because you decided. You decided that silence will not make you walk away. You decided that emptiness will not define your relationship with God. You decided that even without feeling, you will remain. And that decision carries power because it breaks the pattern of dependence on emotion. It builds something deeper than experience. It creates a connection that is not based on what you receive, but on who you trust. And that is where most people give up, not because God left, but because they could not feel Him anymore. But you are still here. You are still listening. You are still searching. And that means something inside you refuses to let go. That is not weakness. That is faith fighting to stay alive. So stay. Even if your mind feels empty, even if your heart feels quiet, even if nothing seems to respond, stay, because this is not the end of your connection with God. This is the moment it becomes unbreakable, the decision that keeps you from giving up. Right here is where everything becomes clear. Not because you suddenly feel God again, but because you understand something deeper than feeling. You understand that your relationship with Him was never meant to depend on what you feel in the moment. It was meant to depend on what you choose when you feel nothing. This is the line that separates those who drift from those who remain. Because the truth is, many people reach this exact point. They feel the silence, they feel the emptiness, they feel the distance, and slowly they begin to step back. Not because they stopped believing, but because they stopped deciding to stay. But you are in a different position right now. You see it, you understand what is happening, and that gives you something powerful. A choice. You can interpret this silence as absence and walk away, or you can see it as a deeper invitation and stay. In Joshua chapter 24, verse 15, it says, "Choose this day whom you will serve." That is not just about external actions. That is about internal posture. It is about what you decide when nothing is pushing you emotionally. And this is your moment. You are not being asked to feel. You are being asked to choose to remain, to choose to trust, to choose not to give up just because your emotions are quiet. Because this decision does something inside you. It stabilizes you. It grounds you. It removes the dependency on what comes and goes and anchors you in what does not change. And once you make that decision, something shifts. You are no longer waiting to feel something to continue. You are continuing regardless of what you feel. That is what makes your faith solid. That is what keeps you from drifting. That is what carries you through silence without breaking. And once that becomes real, something powerful happens next. You begin to experience God in a way that goes beyond feeling. When you discover God beyond feeling, there is a moment that only comes after you decide to stay. Not when emotions return, but when something deeper awakens. You begin to notice that even without feeling, something is still holding you. You are still standing. You are still seeking. You are still connected in a way you cannot explain emotionally. And that is when you start discovering something most people never reach. God beyond feeling. Because before you knew him through experience, through what you felt, through what moved inside you. But now you are beginning to know him through something more stable, through truth, through awareness, through quiet certainty. In Psalm chapter 139, verse 7 to 10, it speaks about how there is nowhere you can go where God is not present. That is not something you feel. That is something that remains, whether you perceive it or not. And now that truth begins to anchor you. You start to realize that his presence was never dependent on your emotions, that even in silence, even in stillness, even in emptiness, he was there, closer than your thoughts, deeper than your feelings, more constant than your experiences. And that realization changes everything. Because now you are no longer trying to feel God. You are becoming aware of him. You are no longer chasing emotional confirmation. You are resting in a reality that does not change. And that brings a different kind of peace. Not the intense emotional peace you felt before, but a steady, grounded peace. A peace that does not rise and fall. A peace that remains. And as you stay in that awareness, something begins to return. Not in the same way, not with the same intensity, but with more depth, a quiet sense of his presence, a subtle awareness that he never left, a confidence that does not depend on what you feel. And that is when you understand something that changes your faith forever. You did not lose God. You just outgrew the need to feel him the same way. And now your relationship with him is no longer fragile. It is rooted. It is real. It is unshakable. A prayer. When you feel nothing but refuse to let go. Right now, you do not need perfect words. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel anything at all. You just need to be honest. Because this is not about emotion. This is about connection. So say this, even if your voice feels empty. Holy Spirit, I don't feel you right now, but I don't want to walk away. I don't understand this silence, but I choose to stay. I don't feel your presence, but I refuse to believe you are gone. Hold me in this moment. Strengthen me where I feel weak. Keep my heart from drifting when my emotions are quiet. In the name of Jesus, don't let me give up just because I can't feel. Teach me to trust beyond what I sense. Teach me to remain beyond what I experience. Anchor me in truth, not in feeling. Even if everything inside me feels empty, I choose you. Even if nothing responds, I stay. Even if I don't understand, I trust. Stay in that. Do not rush out of it, because something is happening even now. Not something loud, not something emotional, but something real. A quiet alignment, a decision that anchors you. And that decision carries power, because you are not praying from feeling. You are praying from faith, and that is where everything begins to shift again, not because emotions return immediately, but because your connection just became stronger than them. You didn't lose God. You are finding him deeper. What you thought was loss was actually transition. What felt like distance was actually depth being formed. You were used to knowing God through what you could feel, through moments that confirmed his presence emotionally, through experiences that reassured you that he was near. But now, you are discovering something greater, A relationship that does not collapse when feelings disappear. A connection that does not depend on emotional response. A faith that remains even in silence. In Hosea chapter 6 verse 3, it speaks about pressing on to know the Lord. That means there are levels of knowing Him that require movement, persistence, decision, not just feeling. And that is exactly what you have been doing. You pressed on, you stayed, you refused to walk away, even when nothing inside you responded the way it used to. And because of that, something inside you has changed. You are no longer fragile in your faith. You are no longer dependent on emotional confirmation. You are no longer shaken by silence the same way, because now you know something that cannot be taken from you. God did not leave. You just moved into a deeper place where feeling is no longer the foundation. And in that place, your relationship with Him becomes stronger than it has ever been. Not louder, stronger, not more emotional, more stable, not based on experience, based on truth. And once you step into that, everything begins to shift again. Because now, even when feelings return, you are no longer dependent on them. You are anchored in something deeper. You are rooted in something real. And that is what keeps you from ever giving up again. Because now, your faith is no longer something that comes and goes. It is something that remains. If this became real to you, write in the comments, "I won't give up," and let that be your declaration that no matter what you feel, you are choosing to stay.